Welcome to Voodoo Whiskey Gaming, and this is my late review of Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2019, the reboot. I played it on Xbox One. It's also available on the PS4 and PC. So let's start with the story, which, like I said, is kind of like a prequel reboot type thing. You play as a few different characters. One is a cop who ends up being partnered with Price eventually, more or less teaming up with him because, you know, terror attacks and shit. Another who is a CIA Spec Ops type guy who partners up with a rebel group who is a group of freedom fighters trying to take down some terrorists. And you also play as the head of that militia group at times. I gotta say, I think they did a very good job with the story. I really enjoyed it. I did notice two things though. One is that there really weren't any super iconic moments, but I do like that they don't necessarily have branching narratives. They do have places where you can make a decision, and you make the wrong decision, everyone dies. You make the right decision, it can be kind of a heavy thing to live with. Yes, it's a video game, but it does do a good job of portraying what, you know, soldiers and these kind of individuals have to deal with in real life. But also, it's a kind of short story. I was a little disappointed in the length of it. But again, I thought it was really well done. Let's get into the audio, and I've got to say, apart from a couple of missing sound effects here or there, the audio in this game is some of the most impressive audio in any video game I have ever played. That may sound pretty extreme, but I was truly blown away by the audio in this game. The voice acting is phenomenal, despite the fact that I will say that having a new voice actor for Captain Price is kind of weird, but you do get used to it. But beyond that, just literally every single sound effect is so impressive. The gunshots are meaty, they're heavy hitting, they sound very realistic, they're very loud, they're very aggressive, not unlike a real gun. So that's really a thing that you gotta get ready for. Even when you suppress a weapon in the game, it's still very loud, which is realistic, and that was really impressive to me. But beyond that, it's just a variety of other things that come in handy. You can actually really hear footsteps, and you can really figure out if an enemy is nearby, and this applies to the multiplayer as well. There were definitely times where I would pause while playing the multiplayer just to listen because I thought I heard somebody nearby, and what do you know, I did, and I was able to get the drop on them because of that. Also, the soundtrack for this game is phenomenal. The music really works to accentuate what's going on in the story at the time. Overall, just some of the most amazing audio. Let's get into the gameplay mechanics and whatnot. This is a first-person shooter. It's a military shooter, obviously. This is, once again, Call of Duty returning to its Modern Warfare timeline, I guess. They definitely did some really cool and interesting things with the campaign and the game in general this time around. They made it, in some ways, much more realistic. Like, in the way that your character moves and the way that your character handles their weapons, small details like that. But specifically, you move a lot slower in this game. There are a lot of parts in the missions in the campaign where your character moves slower in a more tactical manner. Yes, you can run, but it's not like full-out balls-to-the-wall sprint like it is in most other games. You kind of move at a good pace, but a good pace so that you can clear a room and stuff, not sprint around like a maniac. Which sounds weird, and it sounds very unlike Call of Duty, but it works very well in the story. One thing that's very different, and it does lead to kind of a complaint, but not entirely a complaint, is that the missions are smaller, they're shorter, they're much more bite-sized. You don't have like 45-minute long missions anymore. But I do like the way they're set up overall. But let's get into the multiplayer and Spec Ops mode, which I liked both of them a lot. I didn't get as much Spec Ops mode as I would have liked because playing with randoms could be really frustrating. Because the Spec Ops mode, since, you know, Xbox doesn't get the real Spec Ops mode, the Horde mode version, was really kind of mission-based. It was an extension of the story. I thought it was pretty cool. Playing with randoms kind of sucked. When I did get to play with some friends, it got considerably better, but at first it was a bunch of randos, and that was, ugh. It was very hit or miss. As for the multiplayer, I really enjoyed this multiplayer. I think it's probably one of the better multiplayers they've had in quite a while. They have a decent number of modes. If you go into quick play, you can filter it, and you'll see that there are actually quite a few other modes. They also kind of hid hardcore mode behind the filter, so that is a little annoying. So if you're looking for hardcore mode, understand that realism mode is not hardcore mode. The return of hardcore mode is always welcome. It's one of those things that I've always really liked in the Call of Duty franchise. I think it makes it a better franchise than a lot of the other shooters out there. Because as I've said in the past, if you want to level the playing field, play in hardcore mode where every weapon is 2 to 3 hits. I will say one thing that I noticed in the beta was that there weren't a ton of guns, and that is true in the full game as well. One big difference though was the number of attachments. You get a lot of attachments. And as you level up a weapon, you will basically unlock attachment slots for the weapon. Like my handgun, originally I could only see like my barrel attachment, but as I leveled it up, then I could see an optics one, a perks, a trigger one. And once you can see that, you can see things to unlock in that. So I thought that was really a cool way of doing it, and I gotta say, there are so many attachments and customizations for the weapon. It's really impressive. It kinda makes up for the lack of weapon variety. Also, I've got to say, the crossplay worked surprisingly well. I didn't play against too many people on the PC who were using mouse and keyboard, which is weird, because it does show you whether they're using a controller or mouse and keyboard, so it was weird not to see too many on mouse and keyboard. But when I did play, I didn't feel like I was at a disadvantage, and the connectivity was far better in the actual game than it was in the beta. But to put it simply, I really enjoyed the campaign. I fully intend to replay it a few times, and I'm really into the multiplayer right now. I really am digging it. It's a good one. As for the controls, I don't really know what I need to say about the controls. Call of Duty has almost always had the most solid control scheme out there. This is no exception. I felt that it was extremely responsive. The aiming, the moving, that all worked very well. I never had a problem where I felt like my controls weren't doing what I needed them to do or wanted them to do. And lastly, the graphics. Wow, the graphics in this game. It is one of the best looking games out there at the moment. I think it's probably one of the best looking games I've seen. This is definitely one of those super photorealistic games, and it really impressed me. The visuals really draw you in. They make you feel like you are there, like they're real people. To wrap this up, I was very skeptical going into Call of Duty Modern Warfare, and I gotta say, at the end of the day, I'm really blown away with what they did. Specifically because Call of Duty 4, the original Modern Warfare, was one of the first games to really get me into multiplayer. It was a military shooter that I was really impressed with, really enjoyed, and I gotta say, this does live up to the hype. A few small faults, but nothing major. The shortness of the campaign, I do wish it was longer, but still, what you get in the campaign is really good. The biggest problem I had in the entirety of the game was one of the NPCs pushed me into a corner and I couldn't get out, and I had to reload the checkpoint, which was a whopping like 30 seconds before. Vaguely frustrating, but not a major complaint at the end of the day. I almost forgot to mention it. But like I said, the audio, the visuals, just really everything about this game impressed me so much. Obviously, I am recommending this game. I think it is fully worth buying. I loved playing it. It's going to be my go-to multiplayer game for quite a while. Okay, so in the comments below, why don't you tell me what Call of Duty got you into the Call of Duty franchise, if you're into the Call of Duty franchise at all. As I stated, Call of Duty 4 was the one that got me in. And as always, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please hit that like button. And if you like what I'm doing in general, share or subscribe. Have a good one.